Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of my discussion on Afflictions. In this video, I will be talking about Afflictions as they are inflicted by adventurers. Part 1 was about Afflictions as they are inflicted on players, ranked by detriment to playing the character and completing the objective, but it's not necessary to watch that part before watching this one. So, Afflictions. There are 9 in the game, but I'm also going to include Bleed in the group since it's an offensive status inflicted exclusively by players that functions similarly to Burn and Poison, if vastly more applicable. I'm going to rank the Afflictions by usefulness in combat, but before I do, let me clarify a few factors used to determine the positions. First, enemy resistances are going to be accounted for on the basis of how widely they are resisted. Some Afflictions are more widely resisted and thus less useful than others, but this isn't always the case. Second, all Afflictions are amazing in some regard, and several of them are amazing for title runs and content like Void Battles. I'm going to focus a little more on general use. Finally, all Afflictions grant tolerances to the afflicted target, so each successive affliction decreases the chance of the next one being successful. I'm also not taking into account abilities that raise the chance of a successful affliction. Additionally, as I run through the list, I'll discuss the adventurers and dragons capable of inflicting the affliction, as well as Punisher abilities and skills. Same as last time, I'll start with the worst and move to the best. For starters, no adventurer can inflict Curse as of this video. It would probably rank pretty high in this list if players could cancel or stop enemy named attacks, so we may never see it. So the true bottom of the list is Blind. Blind is great in theory, as blinded enemies have a 50% chance to miss all attacks while blinded. The effect doesn't last very long, and it's a coin toss as to whether you're going to get hit or not. Additionally, the amount of enemies that resist it is average compared to the other afflictions. Characters that inflict Blind are Nefaria, Orion, Vita, and Zace, and the dragons that can inflict Blind are Nidhogg and Phantom. As far as Punishers go, Blind is a decent part of Nefaria's kit, and her skill 1 does increase damage against blind enemies. There's also a line of void weapons with Blind Punisher, but since only a handful of adventurers can even apply Blind right now, they don't matter too much just yet, and there is no Blind Punisher dagger for Orion and Vita. Next up is Poison and Burn. These two afflictions are near identical as they both deal damage over time. They're slightly more useful than Blind, as the Blind skill is kind of rare and is also a coin toss of usefulness, whereas these are guaranteed damage. Poison can be inflicted by Addis, Eleonora, Luis, Musashi, Silas, and the dragon Pazuzu. Burn is inflicted by Joe and the Valentine's variants of Ezzelith and Orion, as well as the dragons Cerberus, Hybernhilda, and my sources also say Pele and Ifrit, but their skill description doesn't mention it. I put Burn above Poison for 2 reasons. First, even though Poison is more accessible than Burn, it's more widely resisted. And second, Pazuzu grants Poison Punisher to any wind adventurer, but the Valentine's Print Elegant Escort can be applied to any adventurer. Also of note, Luis's first skill deals more damage to poisoned enemies. Next is Paralysis. Paralysis is like Burn and Poison, but better. It deals damage over time, but may also interrupt enemy movement. Additionally, it is less commonly resisted than both Poison and Burn. Adventurers that can inflict Paralysis are Albert, Luca, Fleur, and Philia, as well as the dragon Liger. I'd like to call special attention to Fleur though, as she is the only one to get Paralyzed Punisher, and her first skill may deal extra damage to paralyzed enemies depending on the skill shift. Paralysis is also a huge part of her kit, and for the number of times she can inflict it, she can do some great damage. Next up are Sleep, Stun, and Freeze. All 3 of these function the same, as they completely immobilize the afflicted enemy for a few seconds. This is really great for crowd control as well as title runs, as players will not have to dodge attacks from the target during this time. And in addition to not having to worry about damage, not dodging lets them complete combos for more SP, and may even use longer skills that would otherwise be dangerous to use between enemy attacks. As for the order, Sleep isn't very common as of now, and it's only available to Sazanka, Kleiman, Weiss, and Lin Yu, and only Sazanka gets Punisher at 5-star. Stun is widely available from the characters Annalie, Fritz, Hawk, Nicholas, Raymond, Ron, Sufan, Yu, and the dragons High Midgardsormr, Rock, and Zephyr. However, Stun is by far the most commonly resisted affliction, which I hope one day changes so that my 50-node Hawk can actually use his Stunned Punisher. Ron has Stunned Punisher too. Freeze is the best of the bunch though, as it is not only accessible, but less frequently resisted than Sleep and Stun. It can be inflicted by the adventurers Celiera, Dragonule Cleo, Fjorm, Lily, Orsum, Dragonule Xander, and the dragons Meridimus, Polyahu, and Dragonule Jean. Again, these are excellent CC afflictions, so anything is good as long as it works. Bog is above all the others because it in itself is like a Punisher ability. It causes afflicted enemies to take significantly more damage and slows their movement, which is universally applicable to any content and is very useful for timed title runs. It is the least commonly resisted affliction too, but also sadly one of the least common. Only Wake and Jacob can inflict it, as well as the dragons Leviathan, High Mercury, and Pang Lai. Regardless, it's a pretty strong affliction. And finally, ranking above the official afflictions, just like in part 1, is the stronger condition that isn't a true affliction. Bleed is another damage over time condition, but better. Not only can it stack with itself up to 3 times, but since it isn't an official affliction, it can also stack with official afflictions. It can be inflicted by anyone from the New Year's Showcase, Eyasu, Botan, Sazanka, Addis, and the Dragon Marishtan. Additionally, Sazanka and Addis can inflict regular afflictions, so the pool of characters that can use this is really good. Nothing resists bleed in any capacity, and nothing builds tolerance to bleed, so it's always useful, especially for Addis, who has Bleeding Punisher and has access to Poisoned Punisher through Pazuzu. So that covers all of the afflictions and bleed. Again, these rankings exist in a void, so pick whichever is better suited for the content you're attempting to clear. I just wanted to cover all the afflictions as I hadn't seen it done yet in any other Dragalia Lost content that I'd seen. If you want to see even more tips for Dragalia Lost, I'd recommend checking out Dragalia Foundry. He's got a bunch of stuff about team building, clearing trials, and summoning. Additionally, consider checking out my Dragalia Lost How to Play series, where I go over individual units while also throwing in a touch of humor. I hope you enjoyed this video on afflictions, and I hope you also have a nice day.